Hello, my beautiful darlings. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Andres, and if you're hooked on books and stitches, you've come to the right place. Today's video is all about my June reading wrap-up, and I fear that this was a really good reading month. So as always, let's go ahead and get right into it and start with the stats. So total books that I read this month are 7. Technically, I could say almost 8 just because of the current book that I'm reading. I'm about almost halfway, and today is June 29th. So maybe I could finish it before the end of the month, but since I'm recording this before the actual end of the month, we're not going to count that one. So, read total 7 books, 2,380 pages. Average time to finish was 5 days, which was pretty good in my opinion. And then my moods, so many moods. My largest ones were tense, emotional, adventurous, lighthearted, and dark. And then my smaller ones were reflective, mysterious, hopeful, and funny. The pace was between a medium to fast pace, medium being 57%, fast being 43%. Page number between that 3 to 500 mark was 57%, and less than 300 was 43%. My genres, such a mixed bag of genres here. Romance, dystopian, YA, contemporary, erotica, magical realism, literary, historical, and fantasy. And then my average star rating was a 4.11 out of my 7 reviews, that's why I'm saying I fear it was a really good reading month. But yeah, let's get right into now all of my reviews. So how I'm going to go through it is I'm going to go through each book that I read in chronological order, like not in terms of like my lowest and highest rating. So the first book I read this month was Shatter by Tahereh Mafi. Honestly, this book really did shock me just because I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did. There were so many likable characters, like even the minor ones, like James. Like,
please, can we please protect James at all costs, please?
Julia's character development was honestly impeccable to me. I really loved seeing her grow out of that mentality of that she is the problem, that she is evil in a sense, when she wasn't. She was only doing everything with the best intentions forward. And seeing her actually get over the fear of her powers and really hone in them and know that they're meant for good use and they're not something negative. Like, yeah, she went through some troublesome situations with her powers, but that's only because she wasn't really knowledgeable on her powers. She wasn't sure what to do and how to like control them and things like that, as anyone would when you first develop a power, if that were real, of course. In a fantasy world, of course, it would be in that way. But I really, really loved seeing Juliet get out of that mentality and realize, I'm a good person. I'm not doing this with any ill intent. The relationship between Adam and Julia was interesting to me. I know that it's YA, so it wasn't obviously going to go into like full depth description how an adult romance would, but it was kind of lackluster for me. It wasn't all that great, especially because I wasn't expecting this book to be so romance heavy. Honestly, it was very romance forward, and still the fact that I'm saying that it's lackluster says a lot. Overall, like the actual plot itself was really, really solid. I really enjoyed it. The book gave me like hella Stranger Things vibes, like specifically 11. When I think of Juliet, I think of 11 from Stranger Things because of the having powers and that one specific power that she has, so she could like break through a concrete or metal wall. That's something that 11 does in Stranger Things, basically. So that was one thing that really got me hooked with the book. So now I know who Aaron Warner is, and I know that everyone and their mother is obsessed with Aaron Warner, but I don't see the hype yet. I guess I just don't see it. This man did not have one single redeemable quality throughout this book, in my opinion. He really was getting on my last nerve, to say the least. But, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to give the series a chance for sure because I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the first one. So I'm going to see how my feelings for Aaron Warner develop. I don't want to say change just yet because maybe they don't change, but maybe they do. So that's what I'm saying. Let's see how they develop. Because everyone, I'm telling you, is obsessed with Aaron Warner. And I don't get the hype yet. Overall, I did rate this book 4 stars. It was a really solid read for me. I had a great old fun time. I read it super fast. I read it in 3 days. Actually, I read it in 3 days. But also it's a YA, so it's a much easier read to go through, of course. The second book I read in the month of June was American Housewife by Anita Abriel. So first things first, I will say please check trigger warnings before reading this book. There's a lot of very heavy topics that are not discussed, like not like in depth, but they're actually brought up and mentioned throughout the book at various points, and it could be a little triggering at times. So just keep that in mind. Definitely check trigger warnings before you get into this book. It's a very commentary heavy book. That's why I say check trigger warnings, because there's a lot of topics that are still relevant to nowadays that were spoken about and really drawn out and shown in a different point of view, because technically it's a historical fiction, but there was romance in here, so I would say it's a historical romance book, and it's set in 1950s New York City. And I really did enjoy seeing like the cultural differences and the fashion and how things were in the 50s in New York. I really like seeing that. Where I really struggled was, unfortunately back then, I guess women were treated very differently by men. There was a certain way they had to behave. There was a certain way they had to look. There was a certain way they had to talk. And if you wouldn't, you would lose your man, or you would lose your job, or you would not be successful in life, unfortunately. And that's not a way that women should be living at all. I love that women have gotten their independence and their power back in the world and in the society that we live in today. I really, really am happy about that. So that was one thing that I struggled a little bit reading, but I know that, it was back then, it was like that, it's just the historical aspect of it. Then the other commentary heavy items were specifically religious intolerance for like Judaism. They just had a lot of hate in their hearts for Jewish people for some reason. And the one Jewish person in the book was always like nervous about saying like, oh yeah, I'm a Jewish person, like my religion is Judaism and things like that. And that's sad. Everyone should just respect their own religions. Everyone has a different religion or just set different beliefs. There's so many different religions. Everyone's different. What is the point of you judging that person if they're a different religion or they're not the religion that you expect them to be, or whatever the case is? Like, it doesn't make sense in my head, but whatever. And the other topic is eating disorders and financial irresponsibility. Not responsibility, irresponsibility. Because these people in this book did not have any notion of financial responsibility, like at all. Like, these people were just spending their money, opening up credit cards, doing the most, like, without a single thought in their head of what consequence could this bring potentially. So that was crazy for me to see, but it's very relatable because when I was 18, I literally started applying for every single credit card in the book. I had like 12 credit cards, and by the age of like 19, within a year, I was already like $12,000 in debt. So I could definitely relate to being financially irresponsible, but there has to be a wake up call. There has to be something that lets you know, like, oh crud, what I'm doing is not okay, because yeah, this is not like free money that's just given to me. This is something I have to pay back eventually. The fact that the financial responsibility was coming from the male main character and not being communicated to the female main character, of course, 1950s, what can you expect? It's not okay to hide those things from your partner. Those are things that need to be spoken about, especially if you're married and you guys are in a joint account and are sharing things, and everything is both of your names. Things need to be reviewed and looked over from both partners, not just from one, and it should never be hidden from the other one, because that's where problems start, and that's where your marriage could be in jeopardy, to say it in a nice way. So another big thing that I had a problem with this book was the fact that there was such a large miscommunication trope, that it was so heavily focused. Like, it kept being the case of like, oh, this happened. Oh, but I don't want to bring it up to him because of X, Y, and Z. So I'll just wait for another time where he seems like he'll be more receptive to this.
No, 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 no.
Miscommunication trope was such a heavy thing throughout the book. Then all of a sudden at the end, they have one conversation, everything is fixed up, and boom, happily ever after, the book is over. That's not realistic. That's not how it happens in real life. That really did upset me. And overall, I rated the book a 3.75. I was really enjoying the book to like the 30 to 50% mark, but then it started getting like so repetitive. It started getting like, oh my god, can these people just have one conversation at least so they know what the F is going on between them and things like that. But finally, it happened at the end, and like I said, it just wrapped up nicely and happily ever after, and that was it. It was not my favorite read, but it wasn't a horrible read. There was a lot of aspects I still enjoyed about it, so that's why I gave it the rating that I did. The third book that I read this month is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and this one was so good. Oh my gosh. Nora and Charlie forever, guys. Like, Nora and Charlie forever. Forever. I cannot think of a single fault in this book because I loved all of the characters, every single one. I loved the setting, the main plot premise of the book was fantastic. I loved the character development throughout this book. Like, oh my gosh. Like, this was my first Emily Henry book, might I say. So I was a little skeptical because I know that Emily Henry is a very well renowned author. Everyone's always talking about her books and how great they are. And, you know, sometimes it could be overhyped. So I was a little nervous, but boy, was I proven wrong because I loved this book, and I want to get into the rest of Emily Henry's backlist of her adult romance books because if it's similar to Book Lovers, I think I might enjoy all of them. I'm not gonna lie. So why I think I enjoyed it so much is because the banter that Nora and Charlie had, not only like through text but also through emails that they had throughout the book, it reminded me so much of Ford and Rosie from Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and that's one of my favorite romance book couples to date right now. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so happy and giddy the whole time reading about them, and I was rooting for them, and I was like, girl, stop pretending like you don't like him. Like, no, shut the hell up. You know you like him. Same with Charlie. Charlie was acting up a big game like if he didn't like her.
Boy bye. Boy bye.
Golden Retriever, literally yearning for her, like needed her. I was loving it and eating it up. It was so good. I really don't want to talk too much more about this one because all I have is straight up spoilers about this one. And so, in case anyone hasn't read it, which I kind of highly doubt, but in case you haven't read it, I'm just gonna shut up about it and tell you that I rated it 5 stars. It was perfect. No notes. Go read it right now. The fourth book I read this month was Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is book 2 in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. And honestly, this book without fail has not this book, sorry, this series without fail has made me cry every single time, every single story. I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. The writing style is so beautiful. The messages behind like the stories themselves are so impactful and so motivating, and they really get you thinking, you know, like about your own life and how it could relate to your own life and how you could apply those lessons to yourself because they're very real life stories about everyday things that happen to people. Honestly, I have, again, no notes about this. Like, there's nothing that I could find a fault in throughout this book. I enjoyed it so much and I read it so fast. I think I read it between 2 days. Technically, like, it was a 1 day read, but in between 2 days I read it and it was just so good, and like I just really fall in love every single time with every single story, and it just is so relatable. Like, it really is so relatable, but it's not about that. It's about the messages and the lessons that you learn in these books. They're so empowering. I love these books so much. And from this review, if you can't tell, I obviously rated it 5 stars too. Wait, oh my gosh, 2 5 stars in 1 month? Who am I? What is this? That's what I'm saying. This was a good reading month. The fifth book that I read this month was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This was not my first time reading it. This is a reread, but the first time I read this was back like when I was like 10 or 12, if I'm not wrong. So it was so great for me to reread this now as an adult and really understand everything. As I was reading it, and I was comparing it to like the movie, because I've seen the movie more times than you could possibly think. They did such a good job in the movie adaptation, honestly. I really give them like kudos to you, mama, for doing that, because for spilling, because let me tell you, it was a really good like book to movie adaptation, 1000%. In that reread, I fell in love. I actually specifically bought the deluxe set, and I wanted to treat myself, so I bought myself the deluxe set. And as you could tell, I read The Hunger Games, and they are filled with my little tabs and all of my annotations and everything. And honestly, look how beautiful. And look at those sprayed edges. Like,
How can some of this not beautiful?
such a good reread. I thoroughly enjoyed this once again, and I really cannot wait to read the rest of the series again, just so I could so I could feel something. I just want to feel something again. And if you didn't know, I rated it 5 stars. So now we're by 3 books that I rated 5 stars this month.
Who am I? Who am I?
The 6th book I read this month is The Hunted Heir. Bear. The sixth book that I hold on. The 6th book that I read this month is The Hunted Heir by Holly Renee, and this is book 2 in the Veiled Kingdom series, if I'm not wrong. And honestly, the fact that I read this book in one day tells you a lot. There is something about Holly Renee's writing that is just so addicting. Like, it's just like so unputdownable for some reason. So with the Veiled Kingdom, I struggled a little bit because of like the morally gray aspect, but that was because it was like the first time that I was dabbling into that trope or whatever you call it. But let me tell you that book 2 did not disappoint, and it was absolutely amazing. I was so hooked. I literally, like I said, I read it in one day because of how good it was. So to kind of give you a synopsis about the Veiled Kingdom, because I don't see this book ever really talked about from anyone, is basically about this girl. She was imprisoned by her own father because she is supposed to be the heir to the throne. Once he passes away, she's supposed to take over, but the only caveat is that she doesn't have any powers, and everyone that has sat on that throne has always had powers. So he was very abusive, to say the least, to her, and was trying to take out the power in her. You catch my drift. But one day, the stunningly amazing, handsome Dakre, I think that's how you say his name. I feel like in the book it has pronunciations, and I didn't like the pronunciation, so I still was like, okay, I'm still gonna call him Dakre. So Dakre comes and saves her from the imprisonment and takes her to his kingdom. They go through this whole enemies, like they hate each other, but they obviously are pining for each other and they want each other. So the enemies to lovers trope is very, very heavy with this book for sure. And then, you know, things hit the fan. And that's how I'm gonna leave it there, because actually I can't talk too much because I'm gonna spoil the book. And as we all know, I'm infamous for spoiling books, so I'm not gonna talk any more about it. But yeah, I read the second book, The Hunted Heir, of that series, and it was really good. I cannot say anything because I would obviously spoil everything from the first book if I talk about the second book. But all in all, I did rate this book 4 stars. Yeah, I rated it 4 stars. It was really good. It was a quick read. It was shorter. It was kind of like a novella in a sense, but not really, because it was like 250 pages. But it was a really strong read. Like, I know that there's a lot of like negative ratings about it, like a lot of things that people didn't like about it, but there were those things I thought I enjoyed them. And keep in mind, reading is subjective. Everyone has their own opinions, so whatever. And the last book that I read in the month of June is Credence by Penelope Douglas. And I have this face for a reason. Obviously, I love dark romance. Don't get me wrong. I'm a dark romance girly. I eat that ish up. But I struggled so much with this book because I couldn't get over the fact that this girl was living with her uncle and cousins. They were not blood related in any way, shape, or form. But he was the uncle to her because he was a stepbrother to her dad. And they were calling each other uncle and cousins in every setting. And I cannot picture that. Like, I'm not a fan of reading about incest. I don't like that idea at all. I know that it exists and it's something that happens probably, but I just did not like reading about that. Oh, another thing that I completely forgot what to mention is check your trigger warnings with this one too, please. Because there was one thing that I was not expecting for it to happen in the book, and it happened pretty early on in the book. And I was about to DNF it at that point if that didn't go the way that it did. And then again, at like the 70% mark, I was like, I'm just gonna DNF this because I couldn't get through it. Like, it was so hard. I did get through it finally, I did. But it was the fact that they were calling each other uncle and cousin, and then those very, very intense scenes of being forced to do things against your will. And her stating to stop, you know, and it took multiple times for her saying stop for it to finally stop. And I don't like that. Me personally being a victim of that, I did not like reading that. It was a very hard thing for me to go through. So that's why I say please check your trigger warnings before reading this, because yes, I've moved on and I've healed from that already. But if you haven't and you have experienced it recently or something of that nature and you are a dark romance reader, please don't read it. Don't. Do not. And overall, I rated the book 2.5. I really did not, I was not enjoying it. It was really hard for me to get through, and I was dying for it to end. Like I said, at the 70% mark, I was ready to DNF, and I was like, I'm almost done. Let me just try to push through. But like each chapter, every time I cut scene at the bottom of my Kindle, it said chapter 30, 28 minutes left in chapter. I was like, oh my god, I don't want to read 28 minutes of a chapter. I know I should have DNF'd it. I know. But I'm not the biggest fan of DNFing books because I don't like to know, like, leaving that, having that in my mind, like, what if I did enjoy the last part of the book, you know? I obviously didn't. But whatever. At least I don't have to go on with my life thinking, like, oh, I wonder how the book finally ended, you know? So that's my main reason why I don't DNF. Not my favorite book of the month for sure. And then one book that I'm not going to include in my review just because I haven't finished it, but I did start reading it about 2 days ago now. It's called Out of the Blue by Sophie Cameron. This is a YA magical realism fantasy type of deal. It's really, really good. I don't know if anyone has heard about this book because I haven't seen anyone talk about it, but basically it's about this girl, her sister, and her dad. They live somewhere in Great Britain, and they relocated to Edinburgh just for a short while because there's this phenomenon happening of these beings, as they call them, just randomly falling from the sky on any given day at any part of the world. And basically, her dad is suffering through a lot of heartbreak because more recently their mom unfortunately passed away. And I guess to keep his mind busy, he just decided to quit his job and get up and go to a completely different country, basically, to go and research these beings and to try to figure out if he could detect exactly where one is going to fall, so he could take that being and profit out of it and things of that nature. So obviously, the main female character does not like that idea, does not enjoy it, and then all of a sudden, one day, a being falls right in front of her, and that's how the story is developing so far. I want to say I'm like almost 40% of the way. I'm really enjoying it so far. It is a YA, so it's a very easy read. I'm going through it super fast. And also, it's a queer book, and it's Pride Month, so I'm living my best gay fantasy right now with that book. But I'm not counting it just because I'm not done. I might finish it before the end of the month, but I'm most likely just gonna include it in my July reading wrap up. So stay tuned for that one. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, my little reading wrap up. If you did, make sure to give me a like and subscribe to my channel, and make sure to hit the notification bell just so you're notified every time I post a new video. I also obviously have social media like all the cool kids do, so make sure to check me out on Instagram and TikTok. And then I also have Goodreads, Storygraph, and Fables, so check out all of my socials. Follow me on there just so we could be besties online as well, not only here on YouTube. And with that, my beautiful darlings, let's get hooked.